Hey guys, what is up? Welcome back to my channel. Today we are talking about my top 10 favorite books of 2019. My name is Kendra. If you're new here, go ahead and subscribe, join the family, check out my social medias. It's at Kendra Cus on Twitter and Instagram, and also I have a Bookstagram now, so if you wanna be friends on Bookstagram and see more bookish content, that's the place to do it. But I think we should just get on into this video because I'm probably going to be rambling about the books I love for a really long time.
Hello friends, just wanted to jump in here really fast and say that the mic was like making weird noises or it was in the wrong place, and I apologize. Sometimes you're gonna hear a little like I tried to cut them out as best as I could, but you know, in the end they're there. And I also filmed this video like 3 or 4 weeks ago, so I'm not gonna refilm it. So please forgive me for those noises, and also enjoy the video. Why did that bird just enjoy the video? I'm gonna get out of here.
So I got my list here, and I want to mention that I chose not to add any rereads to this list. None at all. And I think it was just because if I added a reread, it would have made the list too long. So no rereads, just the books that were read in 2019, unless it was a double read in 2019, which actually there was only one of those books and it's not on the list, so I don't know why I needed to mention that. As I'm speaking, I'm definitely adding a new book to the list, so there's 11. And then there are 5 honorable mentions because I cannot bring the list down that small. So let's just get on into it. The very first book, which was very easy for me to think of, and this is in no particular order, but this is just the very first book that was obvious to me, and that is Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. This book rocked my world. First of all, when I read Six of Crows, I was like, this is incredible. I knew it was an instant favorite, and Six of Crows was a favorite, but I decided not to add it to this list, particularly because I wanted to keep this list small. And also Crooked Kingdom was the book that really hit me like no other. I was obsessed with Crooked Kingdom. I loved all of our characters. I think one of the most important things for me in regards to like really latching onto a book and really deciding if I love a book or not is the characters, and the characters in the Six of Crows duology are some of my favorite characters of all time. Kaz Brecker and Inej Gaffa are like 2 of my top favorite characters of all time from like movies, books, TVs, all that. Like they're definitely on that list, and it is just so incredible. These backstories of these characters are so tragic, which makes for a really sad book, but the way, and I'm a sad girl, like I love sad things, but the way that these things turned out was so beautiful. The way that these stories were resolved were so beautiful and triumphant, and it felt great. Crooked Kingdom has all the emotions, and also the tension between Inej and Kaz like kills me. I could not put this book down. It is so good. Easily 5 out of 5 stars. Honestly, it's one of the few books that's on my favorite list that I can't see any faults in. And like even my favorite books of all time, I know that there's like faults in them and they're not all perfect, but Crooked Kingdom, there wasn't one fault. And same with Six of Crows, but specifically Crooked Kingdom, I can't even find something to dislike about the book. It was all perfect to me. So that is the first one we're going to mention. We're going to start off with a bang. Crooked Kingdom. The next one, like I said, this is in no particular order, but the next one is Sword of Destiny by Andrzej Sapkowski. This is the second book in the Witcher series, but it's not the second in the chronological timeline. It is the second of the, well, I guess it is kind of, but it is the second of the 2 prequels, which are a collection of short stories. And these books, both of them were amazing. And I loved the first one, which was, what was the first one called? Last Wish, obviously The Last Wish. But Sword of Destiny had some different stories that really, really hit me like real deep and real hard. And so did Sword of Destiny. One thing I will say about Andrzej Sapkowski is that he literally writes such deep stories that you don't expect are going to be deep. Like you start the story and you're like, you know that there's going to be an underlying moral, underlying depth to the story, but you first of all, you can't even predict it. It's so unique and profound, and he is just a master at this. I don't know how he does it, but he does. So I loved The Last Wish, but Sword of Destiny had even more Geralt, which I loved. And it had some more depth to the story. It had like one story that was insanely tragic, but also somehow so beautiful. And that just like rocked my world. It had more of the Yennefer and Geralt relationship that needed to be developed for us to understand why they are the way that they are. It was just so good. There was one particular story about, I'm not going to say really anything about it because I want people to read it and I want people to get the full value of it, but it's a story with him and Dandelion. And if you've only watched the show, then Dandelion is Jaskier in the show, but I don't know why they're not calling him Dandelion in the show. It's fine, whatever, but he's the bard, obviously. And he and Geralt are together and they are at this party, and then there's this other person who's in love with Geralt, and at the beginning you kind of feel like it's going to turn into some like this girl just like fawning over Geralt, but it's not that way at all. And the connection between them two, whether it's romantic or just like a personal connection, and what happens throughout the story, just wow, it's deep, it's great. Also, the very, very last story that you see in the show is also shown in the books, but it is in the second book, and it is the last story in the second book, and it is called Something More, and it is the reunion between Geralt and Ciri. And I say reunion because in the book it's a reunion, but that's all I'm going to say because I'm not going to give away any spoilers. But it just goes deep into some backstories with Geralt that we don't know about yet, and it's beautiful. Chef's kiss. And that is why I love Sword of Destiny by Andrzej Sapkowski. So the next two books go hand in hand. So this is book 3 and 4. I'm trying to keep my list as short as possible. I am using excuses, like I am adding more to the list. It's a kind of a cop out, but you know, do we expect anything different of me? I don't think so. These two books are Legendary and Finale by Stephanie Garber, and you might be wondering like why Carnival hasn't been spoken about yet, and I'll touch on that later. But Legendary and Carnival were books that I literally could not put down. I was so obsessed. If you don't know, I'm sure you do, but if you don't, because Carnival is a very popular series on BookTube and stuff. But the first book takes place in, what is her name again? Why am I spacing? This frustrates me. I hate when I can't think of the character's name. It is Scarlet. Why did I forget that? So Carnival takes place with Scarlet and her sister Donatella and this guy named Julian. And obviously we all know the world of Carnival is this big old like game that's really mysterious and almost like the stakes are high, and it's kind of like really mystifying and mysterious and enigmatic and dreamy and kind of dark and scary at the same time. And so it's very action packed, very fast paced. But the second book, Legendary, takes place with Donatella as our main character, which was seriously needed because Carnival, you kind of don't understand her and you kind of get a little weirded out by the events at the end in regards to her. And then we learn a lot more about her, obviously, in Legendary. And I think one of the reasons that I just like latched on to Legendary is I loved Donatella so much. In all of the books I read this last year, 2019, she was a character that I related to a lot. Not to say that like we're exactly the same or anything like that, but kind of like her decision-making process and the things she would love. She was very, very, very passionate, but very, very driven and focused. And those two things hand in hand are a beautiful combo because things are not only like romantic and passionate, but also like she's not afraid to do it because she's driven and she's focused and she's ambitious. And I loved her so much. And the romance, like I loved the romance in the first book, but something about the romance in the second book with Donatella, or Tella, which we call her Tella the whole time. I don't know why I'm saying her whole name, but Tella is just one of my favorite romances I've ever read in my entire life. Donatella and Dante, their connection was so, like, their chemistry is so palpable. It's so thick and like juicy and so prevalent, and you can just feel it. Like you can really feel it. And that is why Legendary, and Finale are on this list. I'm kind of just bulking them together in that statement, but I like crave that story so much. There are so many days that go by that I want to reread it, and I just know that's how bad, like, it's stuck to me. You know what I mean? That's how strong it was for me. The next book is kind of controversial. I guess not controversial, but some people either love it or hate it, and it is Erafire by Sarah J. Maas. And this is technically the third book in the series, but also the fourth because there's a prequel, so. But it's the fourth, I guess, but the third installment, kind of. I don't even know how to say it that way, but you know what I mean. In the Throne of Glass series. I enjoyed the Throne of Glass series before this book, but this book was when I was like, oh my gosh, I am completely into the story. Up to that point, Selena, the main character, had kind of just annoyed me. I liked her because I thought she was strong and she was battling things that we didn't know about yet. And this book told us all those things. And I think that was very important to my connection with the main character. And also there are new characters introduced in this book, particularly that I adore. I love Rowan. I know a lot of people don't. I think he is so strong, but always puts Aelin or Selena first. Always fights behind her when he knows he needs to, because she has to be like, you know, she has to be, this sounds bad, front and center. I don't mean that in a bad way. And he understands that, and he stands behind her, and he always supports her. And I loved his clan. I love his clan. I just love the people that are introduced in this book. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Adian is introduced in this book too. I could be wrong. Anyways, I loved Erafire. It gave me that connection to Aelin that I needed. And up until that point, I just wasn't fully invested in the story. I was going to read it regardless, but I wasn't fully invested. And Erafire really grabbed me and threw me into that book. It shut it. It kept me in there. I wasn't allowed to leave. I was stuck. I called for help. And instead, I just got glory from the book because I loved it so much. And it definitely still stands out to me to this day. I think I read it back in like March or something, but to this day, I'm like still enthralled by it. The next book is also in the Throne of Glass series, and that is Tower of Dawn. And it's so funny. I think it is so funny that I'm so in love with this book, because I remember dreading it before I was going to read it, because I mean, I think it's common knowledge that everyone up until this book hated Chaol. Like, he's kind of just the worst character. He never like truly liked or loved Selena for who she was. And I was just sick of that. I was like, what kind of what a loser, you know? But this book follows some of my favorite characters now, like at the end of the series. Now there's some of my favorite characters. But we get Irene and Chaol, and Chaol has the best like character development in this story. And then we get Sartok and Nezrin, and Sartok is a character I'm so bummed wasn't explored enough throughout the series, because he's one of my favorites. And I love Nezrin so much. I love her personality. I think I relate to her a lot, and I kind of just want to be best friends with her. And I also think Sartok is just so like steamy and like such a gentleman as well. And he seems so attractive. I just love him. But this book in particular, but also this entire series, is so character focused, which is why I loved it so much. I'm definitely more of a character person. I love relating to characters or finding things to relate to. And yeah, I mean, that's all I really have to say about this book. I think the character development was wildly amazing. And I think the story was so important to the way the series ended. And I definitely think it's one of my favorites from 2019. So the next book is The Diviners by Libba Bray. This book was like everything I could ask for. It was like YA, almost with like almost a hint of fantasy, and it takes place in the 1920s. So honestly, could I ask for anything more? I don't know. I loved this book so much. The 1920s are like obviously my favorite decade or time period ever, but also it was such a deep dive into the 1920s, because Libba Bray really took her time on developing that side of the story, making it feel like you were in the 1920s. The language, the communication, the like everything, just like the statements they would make, or the way that they would describe someone's apparel, or the way our main character would act, how it was a little out of character for someone in the 1920s, and she was a little bit more rebellious and rambunctious, and it was just so well done, which is such a bummer because I was so disappointed in the second book, like so disappointed in the second book. But I'm trying not to think about that because we're talking about my favorite books, not my disappointments. And The Diviners really hit home. It followed like two stories, kind of like the main character story, which is Evie, how she moves to New York and how she's developing this idea that she can read objects. And then it follows this other story, which is like this occult, murderous, like ghost-like thing. And it was just so spooky. I read it in September, so it really geared me up for the Halloween season. It was just so enthralling and I loved it so much. I did not expect it to love it as much as I did, and I think about it a lot. I love it, and the sad thing is I just don't know if I'm going to continue on with the series because I really didn't like Lair of Dreams. I don't know if it gets better after Lair of Dreams, but whatevs. Okay, so next book on the list is also, I feel like, kind of a controversial one, and that is The Ninth Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I loved this book. I think I read it back in May or maybe April. I don't remember, but it was like way back then, and I kind of wanted to reread it again this last year, but I didn't get around to it. I kind of want to do the audiobook still though. But The Ninth Circus is just one of the most gorgeously written books I've ever read. I know that some people think it's just boring and a drab, and people don't love it. They hate the writing style. They think it's too flowery, which is funny because usually I'm not like super keen on flowery writing, but this didn't feel flowery to me. This felt very atmospheric, which is, I just love atmospheric writing. And the only bummer to this story is I feel like I would have loved so much more of our two main characters, Marco and what's the girl's name? This is another one of me forgetting one of the most important parts of the book. Celia. I was gonna say like Mia, so kind of close. Marco and Celia. I loved them so much. I feel like they had so much chemistry and so much like, oh, their chemistry was just so incredible. And the like almost like forbidden love aspect of this book really hit home. I loved it so much. The only thing I can complain about is I wish there was more of that. Sometimes the book felt a little confusing with all the new names that were brought up, but the story, the writing, the way I felt like I was a part of this circus, this traveling circus, a part of this magic, I felt like it was happening around me, not in front of me on the pages. That was something I couldn't forget. It's something I can't get past. The way that it was just so beautiful to me. And I know that this doesn't work for everybody. This story really doesn't work for everybody, which is fine. But it worked for me. I loved it to pieces. And I definitely think it'll go down as one of my more favorite books I've ever read. Like, I just think it's so unique and I won't forget about it anytime soon. The next book on the list I'm so excited to talk about, but I feel like I've been talking about it so much lately because I've mentioned it in a lot of recent videos, which it was relevant to mention, but now I feel like it's just going on. And it is The Beautiful by Renee Ahdieh. I also did not expect to love this as much as I did. I actually was watching, I knew it had come out and I knew people were talking about it. Somebody I knew hated it and I was like, okay, whatever. But then I was watching Heather from Aphrodite Reads video and she was talking about how much she loved it. Like, she loved it so much, and instantly, like literally that day, when I left work, we went to Barnes & Nobles and I bought the book, and we actually had to get some work done on our car. So I was sitting there at the shop reading the book, and then went to dinner, and then we got home, and then I was reading the book all night, and then I was reading the book all the next day, and I finished it within like 24 hours because it was so bloody brilliant. I couldn't put it down. It's so funny because obviously you can tell what kind of person I am, that I relate to characters most, but I think that's why I loved this book so much, because the two main characters, I'll call him a main character too, Celine and Bastien, not only was their chemistry just so enthralling and so thick and so just gorgeous and so obvious, the chemistry was just obvious, that's how good it was, but I loved their backstories. I love anyone with a backstory. I just want to know more about Bastien. Also, this writing felt like a young adult version of a very atmospheric adult book. Renee Ahdieh painted the picture of New Orleans like so vivid and gorgeous and beautiful, and I was captivated instantly. I felt like I was in New Orleans. I wanted to be in New Orleans even though I wasn't. She described women's dresses beautifully. She described outfits so beautifully. Like, the scenery. I felt like I could literally like smell a fresh bread baked in New Orleans at times. Like that's how vivid this was. And I just loved it. I cannot wait for The Damned, which is the sequel, to come out in June. I'm just like frothing at the mouth for it. Like that's how much I want it, and I wish I had it sooner. It's okay, I can wait. Maybe I'll request an ARC, we'll see. But anyways, I felt like it was a sophisticated version of like a 2008 young adult novel. It like made the 2008 young adult novel sophisticated, modern, fresh, and so deep and so gorgeous, which was so refreshing, and I loved it. It was unique, it was original. It didn't steal any ideas from anyone, which, you know, isn't particularly a bad thing. That's how you get inspiration, but it just felt so authentic and so beautiful. The next book, I feel like it's also a controversial one, and it is Wicked Saints by Emily A. Duncan. This book is also a book I've talked about a lot lately because I actually had an opportunity to read the arc of The Ruthless Gods by Emily A. Duncan, which is the sequel, and I loved it so much. I loved Ruthless Gods. I thought it was even better than the first book. But I really did love Wicked Saints. I was pretty captivated. I won't say that this book was perfect. I do feel like it had a lot of flaws to it. For instance, pages like 1 through 99 were so fast paced. Well, actually it was like pages 1 through 80 were like so fast paced. It was so hard to keep up. It was confusing. But then after that, the book started to slow down. It gave you tons of time to digest the story and tons of time to pick up what was going on and relate with the characters. But then it started to slow down a little too much. And then the last like 25% of the book was so amazing. I couldn't put it down. I was obsessed. And so you might be thinking, like, clearly that doesn't sound like a 5-star book. And honestly, I don't think I gave it a full 5 stars. I think I gave it like a 4.5 or yeah, probably a 4.5. But the reason this is one of my favorite books of 2019 was because I loved these characters so much. Malachias is one of my like book boyfriends. I love him so much. He's so like deep and broody and dark, and there's always something going on in his mind that I'm trying to figure out as a reader, and I couldn't get away from that like attraction I felt for him. Like I always needed to know more about him, and I really liked the other two characters as well, but he's the one that really stuck out to me. So that is why this will go down as one of my favorite books of 2019, because I just felt like it was so well done in the character department, and obviously it only gets better in the second book. I'm just saying. And then this is actually number 11 but I'm sorry, I couldn't contain myself. This is Queen of Nothing by Holly Black, which I feel like is also a controversial book, but I loved Queen of Nothing. I thought it was a really good ending to the Cruel Prince series. I got kind of everything I wanted except for one thing. I think there needed to be like 100 more pages, and I think we needed to have more Jude Carden content. They are such an interesting and intriguing pair. It was just kind of a shame that we didn't get as much alone time with them, I guess is what I want to say, that we should have, which is one of the reasons why I love The Wicked King. I don't think The Wicked King will go down as one of my favorite books of 2019 though. In Wicked King, we did get a little bit more like one-on-one time between them two, which was amazing. I just ripped my earring out of my ear. Oh my gosh, what the heck is wrong with me? Just so jazzed up talking about Queen of Nothing. But I did love the Queen of Nothing. I thought the ending was perfect. I definitely see that Holly Black opened a door for two particular characters to maybe have something going on between them two in a follow-up series or something like that. And I'm really kind of here for it. I definitely would read it. I just loved Queen of Nothing so much. It was probably my most anticipated read of 2019. And it didn't disappoint. Only maybe a tiny bit with not having enough Jude Carden content. But other than that, I thought it was amazing, fantastic, flawless. Well, not flawless, but you know what I mean. And I loved it, and yeah. I have a few honorable mentions, which, yes, this is just another cop-out, but I can't not mention these books. These are also not rereads, but these, you'll understand why I'm saying them. And the first one is A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. And the reason this didn't make the list of 2019, I think, is because one, I kind of started it in December and finished it like late into the night, technically, which was January 1st, I think. So I really don't think of it as a 2019 read. I definitely think of it as a 2018 read, because it's been over a year since I read it. And I loved it so much. It definitely was one of my favorite books that I've ever read, but I just don't think of it as a 2019 read. And also I think it's intriguing that I think I might like the Throne of Glass series more than a Court of Thorns and Roses series. But that theory has yet to be tested because I would need to reread both series, and both are quite large, especially Throne of Glass, and they have long books. So don't know when I get around to that, but I do love that book. It is one of my favorites. I just didn't want to add it to the list. The next honorable mention I didn't add because I just feel like it's not like a trending book, which I don't mean to say that in a bad way, but I wanted to keep this list as to like more relevant books or books that I loved. And this is also a nonfiction book, which I did love it endlessly, and it is The Princess Diaries by Carrie Fisher. There's nothing wrong with it. It was honestly perfect. I did most of it on audio, so I got to listen to it from Carrie Fisher's words, her own mouth, herself, and I loved it so much. I just feel like it's nonfiction, so I didn't really want it to add it to the list. I don't know, you can take that for what you will, but it was amazing, incredible. The next book is The Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. It was amazing, so good. I did read it this last year. I love the movie maybe slightly more than the book, but I also love the book, and it's just because I love the movie and the book so much. And that's all I'm gonna say about that. You should read it. I think I read it in one sitting, maybe 2 sittings. It's definitely middle grade, and I feel like it's kind of more of a novella. It's kind of shorter, but it's amazing. The next book is Six of Crows, which I did mention, but it's definitely more of an honorable mention because Crooked Kingdom hits the list. Six of Crows, I mean, honestly, Six of Crows hits the list too because it was amazing. I loved it so much. It's one of my favorite books of 2019, but I wanted to be more specific, and so that's why this is an honorable mention. Take that for what you will, but it was amazing. And the last book is Carnival. I don't know if I mentioned a little bit when I was talking about the series before as to why it's not like on my favorites list. And I want to make it an honorable mention because it does set up the world that I love so much. But I felt like Carnival was a little lacking in certain departments for me. Felt like it felt a little, I hate to say this word because it sounds bad, but it's not. I really liked the book. I don't think it's bad at all. I think I gave it 4 stars. It was an amazing book. But it felt a little juvenile at times. What I mean by that is that it felt like things were explained a little too much, which is fine. I think some readers, younger readers especially, need that. But anyways, I thought everything about it was beautiful. I loved the characters. It just felt a little juvenile at times for me, and I didn't connect with it as much as I did with Legendary and Finale. I know everyone and their dog is the reverse of that. Everyone and their dog loves Carnival more than Legendary and Finale, but that's fine. That's just how they think and how I think, and I just connected with the story more so in Legendary and Finale, and that's why they made the list. And Carnival, sadly, just an honorable mention, which is still an amazing thing because I still loved the book. It was amazing, just not as infinitely amazing as Legendary and Finale. Okay, I am tired of talking. I feel like I've just rambled on and on about these books that I love so much. I'm just happy if you're still here, if you stuck around till the end. If you did, let me know if you feel the same way about any of these books down in the comments, and let me know what were your favorite 2019 reads. I'd love to compare and contrast. But with all that being said, I'm gonna let you guys go. Don't forget to check out my social medias if you want to see what I'm up to on a day-to-day basis at Kendra Cus. And yeah, I'd love to be friends with you there, but I'm gonna let you go. Have a great morning, evening, day, night, whenever it happens to be that you're watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.